There we go.
Yep.
So, all right. The main reason I wanted to get hold of you, Mark, was I bought your book, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago, and
Yep.
just exploring. A lot of people say they've never heard of you, they've never heard of the book. So I thought, why not? Since I'm filming all your tracks, I might as well do an interview with you.
Well, that's thank you.
Yeah, just a few questions and sort of get into it. What is your involvement and how did you get involved with off-roading and four-wheel drive?
Well, I moved to the South Island from Wellington in the late 80s, and just started going for a few tramps and realising that you didn't have to go too far before you were on a gravel road or even a dirt track, and started to think, well, maybe a four-wheel drive wouldn't be a bad idea. And then I got involved with working on the very first book in the series, and through that got involved with four-wheel driving. Yeah, haven't looked back. Love it.
Yeah, and I see you've got a short wheelbase Land Cruiser.
A long wheelbase now. Yeah, I've got an 80 series. I had a short wheelbase 70 series Prado, but moved to the 80 series Land Cruiser about 3 or 4 years ago now.
Okay. Is that petrol or diesel?
Diesel. Yep. I love it.
I had 2 petrol, and I towed a quad bike trailer with 4 quad bikes from South Africa to Namibia, and I averaged 52 litres per 100. It was my worst consumption.
Yeah.
Well, what would your dream vehicle be, or is this 80 series your dream vehicle?
Oh, this is my dream vehicle. Yeah, I searched probably about 3 or 4 months. I searched to find it. It's fresh off the boat, and I had some quite specific specs I was looking for, and it came up. So, yep, that's my dream vehicle. Yeah, it's had a suspension lift, and yeah, it's great. I love it.
Okay. What inspired you to create the book? Was that just to share your experiences with other people?
Well, I got involved right at the very start with Ken Sibley, who was working on putting a book together about four-wheel drive tracks with the publisher down here in Christchurch, Shoal Bay Press, and it grew out of that. Really, I got brought in to help, write the book, and just got more and more involved. As I say, I was already starting to think that you'd be silly not to have a four-wheel drive in Christchurch. Like in Wellington, if I'd stayed in Wellington, I wouldn't have got into it because you've got a long way to go before you can find anything really interesting. But down here, South Island, particularly, you get down into central Otago, it's just amazing. So it was the landscape really that threw me into it.
When we were in the Mackenzie country 2 weeks ago, it reminded me so much of Namibia, except obviously for the snow. But the grasslands, and it was...
Yeah.
And
I think that's the amazing thing, is that you can get to access all these strikingly different terrains just within a couple of hours.
Yeah. Well, whereas for me, I've got to drive at least 2.5 hours, and then basically I can go to a beach on North Island. There's very little else.
Yeah, that's right. I do feel sorry for Aucklanders, to be honest. And feel quite special when at a weekend you drive to some hut and you've got the whole valley to yourself, never mind the hut, and thinking, well, in Auckland there'd be probably at least a dozen people here, if not more.
Yeah. I've now lived in New Zealand 5.5 years. What would you say the future is of four-wheel drive with the government and political nonsense and political correctness and all that?
Well, I think the future's bright. I think in the nearly 30 years that I've been involved in these projects, the way that Department of Conservation has moved into some areas and legitimised what was happening and said you can drive here but you can't drive there, and if you drive here, these are the rules, and this is the access point, and all the rest of it. I think it's done a lot to open things up. Before that, it was absolutely dependent on whether you knew the name of the landowner and knew the phone number. So making it more official through DOC has been a good thing, and certainly a change in attitude from 2 or 3 decades ago, where DOC had quite a harsh policy towards 4-wheel driving. But I think also it's been the 4-wheel drive clubs just making the point that we're not all the hoons.
Yeah.
There are people that will do that stupid stuff, but we're not them. And so what's happened is that club access and access for legitimate 4-wheel drivers has improved, because landowners and the government and officials recognise the difference now between hoons who will either be in a 4-wheel drive or a quad bike or a motorbike or whatever they can find to just go out and wreck things. But here's another group of people who are doing this as a legitimate, recreational activity. And I think the growth of overlanding as well has come through. People didn't used to talk about overlanding, but now that notion of doing a multi-day trip through the countryside, as opposed to spending a Sunday afternoon in a paddock sort of doing donuts, has really started to appeal and catch on.
We've got a group together, and it's basically overlanding being in North Island. So it will be back roads, roads, exploring, and also looking a little bit at the history and going to old mining areas. And being a bit older, when you knock on the farmer's door and say, can we have a look, and what's the history, they're generally quite open.
No, that's right. Again, that making a distinction between people rather than just lumping them all in together. So that's been great. Yeah, and I've really that's what I really appreciate now, is doing those multi-day trips. My friend Richard Salt from 4x4 Explorer helps me organise some trips, and there's nothing better than being, out there around the campfire, a long way from anywhere else, spinning some yarns.
North Island, we feel deprived.
Well, there's the same publisher, Shoal Bay, that did the original 4-wheel drive South book in the mid-90s, also did some North Island ones. And they're long out of print now. They came out in the 90s. There was Andy Cocroft from Land Rover Club in Wellington who did the work on those. Even then, it was quite clear that the really good 4-wheel driving was in the South Island in terms of quantity as well as quality. So, and the very first book that Andy did, to be honest, after a couple of years, I think about 30% of those tracks, the access was closed off. It's just it's not, as I say, if I was still if I'd stayed in the North Island, I don't think I would have got involved with 4-wheel driving. But down here, you're almost crazy not to. It's just so easy to get. The closer you get, as soon as you get to Central Otago, wow, there's still trips I want to do in Central Otago, and I've been going down there for nearly 30 years to do trips.
I've got one of those old green books on North Island, and as you say, I've started working through it, and you've got nowhere to go.
No, that's right, and it is an ongoing issue as they're working through those access issues. And to be honest, it's the population pressure that causes the hesitancy in terms of opening up access. Particularly around Auckland, obviously, you've just got so many people that want to go out 4-wheel driving. But I've always said right from the start, if you've got the time and you're really serious about 4-wheel driving, you've got to do a couple of decent trips around the South Island.
Oh, well, we've just got back from 16 days.
Yes, well, there are farmers who allow convoys, so much per vehicle. The best way to access those is through club membership. So a club will have people that know who to talk to, and there might be a per vehicle cost, a charge for maintenance of that track. But it's a case of finding out who.
Okay. A few other things. What's been your most unusual experience in your 30 years of off-roading?
Oh, most unusual. There's been some quite unusual ones. Driving through the tunnels on out of Reefton, the old gold mining tunnels. That's a wonderful trip, and you just really feel like even before you get that, just driving up this really close canyon is really quite amazing, and unlike anything else you're going to encounter, even in New Zealand. That's quite wonderful. I still remember the first time I camped at Mavora Lakes one evening. Just one of the most beautiful campsites I've ever been at. So and a few times that were unforgettable because they were a bit scary. But not too many of those.
Now, we've all had a few of those when you push it. Yeah. And push it and, what do you think about four-wheel drive training? I got an email today from somebody saying, what about doing training? Now, we used to do that in South Africa. You weren't allowed to drive a trail unless you'd been certified by somebody who had passed all the exams. What do you think about that? Because everyone seems very anti, the same as they're very anti-boat licenses and anti-everything.
I think from if your work involves four-wheel driving, then there are courses available, and that becomes a health and safety thing that you've got. You've been certified to you know what you're doing off road. The clubs all offer training of some form because obviously they want people in their convoys to know the basic procedures and how to correctly do a snatch tow and all the rest of it. Outside that, as far as I know, there's not a lot that's formalized in terms of training in New Zealand. And to be honest, I still think probably joining a club, going on a few trips, finding out what is regarded as safe practice is probably still the best way to go. Often you see, examples of good practice, but also you see people doing, really stupid things like doing a snatch tow without using rated shackles and things like that. So it can go horribly wrong, especially with recoveries, if you don't know what you're doing. So it pays to check it out, and whatever way you can. As I say, in New Zealand, it remains a bit informal. Unless as a private person you wanted to pay to attend a four-wheel drive course through through somebody that is able to do so. Yeah. But yeah, I still think clubs is the best way to do it.
Yeah, it's also nice having the camaraderie, I think.
Well, exactly. Yeah, exactly. And it's not like it is recreation, so it's good if you can do it with other people.
Now, most of the time I travel alone, but it's just because of time and everything else. So I'm not that antisocial.
No, it's nice traveling in a convoy. It gives you you feel a lot more relaxed, especially if you're not at the front. Yeah. And you can just go along for the ride and enjoy it all.
Now, we got to the Macaulay River 2 weeks ago during the rain. We did 10 days of rain, and I got about halfway, and then I got to the main crossing, and I was alone. Yeah. Just my wife and I. And right. Thought if I had another vehicle with me, maybe, but I chickened out. And no,
and that's fair enough. I have to say the feeling that I get seeing another vehicle in my mirror is great. Yeah. You certainly feel a bit bolder and all the rest of it. But if you're all by yourself and you know just how quickly it could go horribly wrong, especially if it's a river, then maybe best to wait another day.
As far as your book is concerned, are you going to be updating the book and bringing in new information?
I'll keep an eye on the routes and updating them. I'm not looking to add any more routes. So the 115 routes in my current book were boiled down from the 200 routes that were across the two earlier books that I did with Ken Sibley. So in the process of settling on where I didn't publish some that were out of date and various things, and I added in some other ones. And I kind of feel my answer to that question as well. When you've done all 115, come and give me a yell and I'll give you another one. But I think that's a pretty good start. And to be honest, I do think things have moved with the technology, obviously, and the GPS. So, as I say, with my friend Richard at 4x4 Explorer, you're able to download actual GPS snail trails for a whole lot of routes. So, which wasn't available when we did the books. So there you go. Right, and I don't feel like reinventing the wheel there when Richard's got that side of things covered. People, it's funny, yeah. I think with a book, it's still aspirational though. People get the book so they can look at it and go, yep, and they can put together the list of trips that they really want to do one day, and then get organised and do the big southern journey one day.
I mean, it's something you got to do. And also, I mean, it was just my wife and I, and I've driven over 2 million kilometers in Africa, so we drive a lot. And driving every day, I managed to do 12 or 13, and that was it, because there's other things in it, the weather, and luckily my wife goes with, and she doesn't mind. I wouldn't call it a favorite activity, but we drove a lot, and we only did maybe 13 in 16 days, but that includes driving down, and that's really 2 days, and the ferry crossing was delayed. So
yes, yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's a big commitment for North Islanders, that's for sure.
No, I did 4,500 kilometers in that time. So anyway, it's what I love doing. So then,
yep, sounds great.
So you mentioned before when we were chatting about doing guided trails. I think that's really interesting. You want to talk about that?
Sure. So that was a few years ago, and that's part of the reason why I bought the 80 series was to I was running, setting up a business of guiding convoy tours through the South Island, following many of the classic routes in the book. So that was, I gave it a good go and had some wonderful trips and some great clients, and everybody always, I loved the way that they'd meet in a car park somewhere on the Monday morning and wander around shaking hands, not knowing who anybody was, and by the Friday they were lifelong friends, swapping phone numbers and everything. It was great. I really felt like that was something special. But yeah, didn't quite get the numbers I needed to make it sustainable as a business. But I'm actually going to have another go at it now with Richard Salt from 4x4 Explorer has come on board, and we're going to give it another go this season. So we're just going through the process of getting the necessary certifications, etc. And but if anybody's interested, they should certainly be checking out. That's 4x4 Adventures 4x4 Explorer Adventures on Facebook, and they'll see what's available. We've got some great ones coming up. We've also been trying to work on the notion of a proper overlander trip, with people bringing camper trailers, things like that, see what extent there is interest in something a bit longer, more like a week and a half, 2 weeks of off-roading. But we're just sort of testing the market there and seeing how it all comes together.
Unusual. What's your favorite food off-road? I find it's a mission.
Sorry, my
favorite food.
My favorite food. Well, actually, I think the thing with people forget that when you're off-roading, a lot of the time you're just sitting on your bum behind a steering wheel. And it's very easy to overeat, I find, particularly for lunch. So I keep it really light for lunch, just a miso soup, something like that. But a decent breakfast, and for sure a decent meal at night. But yeah, I keep it pretty low key. Don't go for a big heavy cooked breakfast. It'll just sit in your belly all day while you're grinding along. So yeah. Yep, and yeah, lots of water, obviously, but I roll on coffee mainly.
And then, yeah, you've still got books for sale, so I can let everyone know.
Oh, absolutely. Yep, absolutely. Yeah, just through the website, 4wdsouth.co.nz, and just click on buy a book.
Yeah,
it's easy as that. But on the same website, there's a lot of extra detail. There's, to be honest, looking a little amateurish these days, but I did put together maps that you can PDFs of maps that you can download that match the routes in the book.
Okay.
Yeah, so, and just some examples of some trips we've done and things like that, and a bit of video. I've got a Facebook page, 4WD South Explorers, and on the Facebook side, and that's got some really nice video that I've shot at various times.
Okay, well, that sounds good. All right, then some quick answer questions. What's your route in South Island?
Pretty much anything in Central Otago, anything old man, old woman range area. Through Nevis, it's absolutely stunning. You just can't do it too many times.
Rooftop tent or ground tent?
Ground tent. Don't really understand rooftop tents in the New Zealand context. You need them in in Africa and Australia, where things can crawl into your tent and kill you, but we don't have much of that. You're more likely in a rooftop tent to be blown off the top of your truck.
Mud or sand? Which is your favourite?
Oh, mud, I think. I just love with mud. It generally means that there might not be too many rocks around, so you kind of it's like a toboggan ride, really. I quite like that. Just muddy ruts where you just, even if you turn the wheel, you just keep going straight ahead anyway.
Sounds like fun.
Yeah.
Long wheelbase or short wheelbase?
Well, depends. This is always the answer, isn't it? But I do love the long wheelbase now that I've got it, over the short wheelbase that I used to have for river trips. Just so much easier to negotiate the boulders and to bridge over the rocks rather than just pitching up and down all day.
Diesel or petrol?
Diesel. Yep, you need that low torque. You need it to just quietly grind away all day.
Limited slip diff or lockers?
Well, it comes down to what the truck had when you bought it in a big. So my 80 series, when I was saying earlier that I shopped around a bit to find it, that's because I wanted it with factory front and rear diff lockers, which is a lovely thing you can find if you find the right 80 series. Otherwise, I think I'd be looking to put it in a locker, but if I didn't have those, then I think I would actually go for an auto locker in the front diff, if I only had a choice of one locker, if you know what I mean, rather than putting in a rear locker. LSDs are great, why not? My Prado didn't have one. If you can, it's the kind of thing you look for when you're buying it, and that comes down to how long you've got to look and how much. I really held out, as I say, for 3 or 4 months to get the truck with the features I wanted, and then I had to pay for it as well. So, it all goes together, doesn't it? But then I don't anticipate needing another truck.
Well, that's my feeling when I don't have kids in the car with me. It's just my wife and I. So the FJ's got enough room. In Africa, before I left, I had a 76, which I bought new, and that had lockers front and back. And the FJ, it's got traction control, it's got a rear locker. I've never needed more than that. I don't do stupid things.
No, that's right.
I'm a bit older, which also makes.
Well, that's part of it as well. You know, I mean, I get more cautious as I get older. Yeah. I don't know whether it's more sensible or not, but you know.
Sometimes I wonder, but 2021, what is your take on the year and off-roading and general? It's a bit of a broad.
Oh, well, I'm enjoying these cold snaps. I'm looking forward to doing a trip into the mountains in a couple of weeks when it's really cold and there's a good bit of snow around. Other than that, yeah, looking forward over the coming summer to starting the Convoy tours again with Richard, getting that back up and running, and yeah, looking forward to getting out and about. But yeah, it's a great time of year, to be honest. Canterbury at this time of year, just wonderful. It's just wonderful. As long as you don't mind a bit of cold, it's the best.
The cold is, I much prefer the cold. And I don't know, I just...
Yes, well, that's right. Well, it keeps other people who want to stay at home do so.
So there's less people, which is nice.
That's what it's all about, yeah.
Anyway, but thank you for your time, and I'll see you.
No worries.
All right, thanks.
Thank you. Cheers. See you later.